Welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Rochester, a church of open minds and loving hearts since 1866, celebrating many sources of wisdom and many spiritual paths. Your faith, your doubts, your hopes, your identity are welcome here. If you are a newcomer and want to learn more about our church, how to get involved or become a member, you can speak with me or any staff member following the service. Join us after the service for coffee out in the courtyard. Actually, I'm not sure that's true. Is there? I don't think so. No, only after the first service, and this is the second. Note in your order of service, however, there are several special events in the coming weeks. Stafford, who most recently served White Bear Unitarian Universalist Church in Mahtomedi, where Reverend Luke served with her before serving here in Rochester. We are so glad to have you here this morning. Welcome. Also, welcome to Rod Milbrandt, our guest musician this morning. He is a member of our church and teaches physics and engineering out at RCTC. Our monthly justice partner is Hawthorne Helps, providing support and resources to those in need through Hawthorne Education Center. You can give during the offering music or anytime online at uurochmn.org. Half of our collection each week this month goes to support their work. Thank you for your generosity. Now let us enter into this time of worship with these words from our minister in the 1870s, the Reverend Eliza Tupper Wilkes. May our faith in humanity and our message of hope and good cheer light our way. It's good to be together.
Friends, good morning. It's a joy to be with you today and an honor to be here, invited by my beloved colleague, Reverend Luke. These words for chalice lighting come from Teresa Soto. To what have we promised ourselves? To this moment in time and place, to this community thing between us that we cannot tame and cannot measure. The chalice is a reminder that what flame we keep inside us cannot light the way. The light must spill to shine. The thing you must be is yourself, unadulterated, shedding the willingness to journey alone as though you're made of something hard and unforgivable. You are human. You belong right here, right now. Our light will spill and shine to hold us all. Our hymn is Wake Now My Senses, number 298.
Children, you can stay in your seats today because we're going to have some slides that go along with the story I'm going to tell. But today's story is kind of a tough one because has anybody heard of all the problems going on in the Ukraine right now? And that it starts with each of us as individuals. It is entitled Peace Begins With You, and it's adapted from a book by Catherine Scholes. Peace can feel warm, bright, and strong. Or it can feel calm and cool and gentle. Peace can be found in a place that is busy and loud, or it can be our lives. So, what is peace? There are some things you need just to stay alive: food, water, shelter, clothing. Peace is having all of the things you need. There are other things that you want to help make life good. Small things like a cup of hot chocolate or a walk on the beach or being with your friends. And there are big things like being brave, going to school, and knowing you are loved. Peace is being able to have, hope for, and lives. And peace is being allowed to be different and letting others be different from you. And because people are different, their needs and wants don't always easily fit together. And even when people are not very different, they can dream of different things. Sometimes this can cause problems, and problems can be very unpeaceful. Or something completely different can happen. There can be another kind of argument where both sides can explain their needs and wants. It won't necessarily be a quiet argument, but it can be a time to listen to each other and work together to solve the problem. The beginning of something new. But what happens when people have talked, listened, thought, and still they cannot come together? There are always choices to be made. Some choices threaten peace, and some protect it. Every day, people make choices about peace in their own lives, and it is important to recognize that their choices affect others too, especially when there is conflict between one country and another. People making choices in this situation are impacting millions of lives. Some of these choices may lead to war, and this does not maintain peace. Sometimes, and I would argue most of the time, working for peace may be more difficult than using force. It requires different skills than war, and people must think and plan differently. But working for peace is worth it. Peace is always the better way. Some people can only think about having peace for themselves and don't care what others want or need. They stay in their peaceful place and helps communities and all around the world is a peace that is real for everyone. And this can only begin to happen when more people work together to make sure that others have the things they need, and at least a few of the things they want, and that they're treated fairly. Caring about problems in the world and even having problems of your own doesn't mean you can't feel peace anymore. There's a special peace that lives inside you, and let it spill out like the flame. Peace is not a gap between times of conflict and a space where nothing is happening. Peace is something that lives and grows and spreads, and it needs to be tended to. And it begins with
Every morning when I wake up, I write morning pages, a journaling practice learned through participation in several Artist's Way classes. I write out my Riki Gasho meditation and 3 items for which I am grateful. Recently, number 1 on my gratitude list has been waking up alive, but more than that. It is the good fortune of waking up in a country without a physical war within its boundaries and being privileged to have food, shelter, clothing, good health, and the freedom to speak my mind. Thus, I think about the Ukraine and politics and the privileged place I have landed in this life every morning. Personally, I can't think about the Ukraine without thinking about the Middle East and Africa and multiple other places in the world with violent instability. There is a physicality in my thinking. It feels as if there is a hollow space inside where insecurity about our future as human beings nestles and grows. I have to work hard to keep a positive outlook. I've joked with my husband in recent months about becoming a cynic in my old age, something I swore when I worked among the proud cynics at IBM that I would never do. So I am fighting that tendency. Yesterday, and I do mean yesterday, I ran across a poem by Ursula Le Guin, one of my favorite authors, originally published in Orion magazine, which reminds me of the larger non-cynical perspective. Very slowly burning, the big forest tree stands in the slight hollow branch, leaf, and no earth, dark, sun, light, wind, touch, bird, song. Rootless and restless and warm-blooded, we blaze in the flare that blinds us to that slow, tall, fraternal fire of life, as strong now as in the seedling 2 centuries ago. Let me read it again. I had to read it at least twice myself when I found it. Very slowly burning, the big forest tree stands in the slight hollow of the snow, melted around it by the mild, long heat of its being and its will to be root, trunk, branch, leaf, and no earth dark, sun, light, wind, touch, bird, song. Rootless and restless and warm-blooded, we blaze in the flare that blinds us to that slow, tall, fraternal fire of life, as strong now as in the seedling. I can take my cue from the tree, stand next to its bark, and drink in its deep slowness. I find that I don't actually have to be next to the tree to have that experience, and it helps me to slowly renew my faith in my ability to move forward into an insecure future. It's not that I have a choice about moving forward. Time is inexorable, but I do have a choice about how I choose to move through time. So I choose to picture the power of the tree in that hollow inside, sending roots down into the earth through my feet, and branches and leaves throughout my body and into the world. In that way, I am grounded.
Tall and short. Good morning. It is good to be with you. I invite you to settle in here as we create a place of communal caring and connection. Be enriched by the presence of each other and draw yourself closer into the heart of love at this time of service and reflection. It's our time to pause amidst the busyness of our lives, to slow down enough to consider the beauty that is here all around us, and to open a space for listening and love. Here, we honor all who support us in this caring and loving and all-inclusive ministry. We send gratitude to Mary Jane McClellan. We thank them for that. The members of our caring committee are wonderful examples of our compassionate community, holding us up as we go through challenging and happy times. These last 2 years have taken a lot out of us. They have taken a lot from us. If during this time of increasing needs in our lives, you are experiencing challenges, we encourage you to reach out for support and help. Many of us may need additional care, whether it be personal pastoral care or other assistance, and we encourage you to reach out to Reverend Luke or myself with that request. As our UUs have been doing for over 150 years, we are continuing to adjust to an ever-changing world and new ways of doing things. Through this time of adjustment, we ask for hope and patience, understanding and acceptance, and a renewed commitment of service to those in our lives, church, and community. Breathe deep the breath of life. Feel below you the earth and its ancient turning, and above you the sky and the stars, shining with ancient light. Holding you in this space, yourself made of earth and stars. Sit deeply here in this community of love and justice, hope and grace. Know that here you are named and you are known as beloved. I invite you into this time of meditation, this time of prayer, first by sharing silence together. Spirit of life, source of love, God of 1,000 names and beyond all naming, we hold in our hearts all those who suffer in mind, body, or spirit. I invite you to bring the names you are holding in your heart this day, in joy or sorrow, celebration or concern, and silently or aloud now in this time to speak their names. For all those names, spoken and unspoken, may we be held in love and grace. It is with sadness that we share the news that Marty Peterman, longtime member, died this past week after time in hospice care. We hold Marty's memory and his wife Charlotte in love and care. Memorial plans will be shared at a later date. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we will remember him. These words of meditation come from Emily Dickinson. Hope is the thing with feathers. Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. And sweetest in the gale is heard, and sore must be the storm that could abash the little bird that kept so many warm. I've heard it in the chillest land and on the strangest sea, yet never in extremity it asked a crumb of me. May the faith in the Spirit of life, love for the community of earth, and love for the light in each other be ours now and in all the days to come.
The first reading is Muriel Rukeyser's poem, It Is There. Yes, it is there, the city full of music, flute music, sounds of children, voices of poets, the unknown bird in his long call, the bells of peace, essential peace. It sounds across the water in the long parks where the lovers are walking, along the lake with its island and pagoda, and a boy learning to fish. His father threads the line. Essential peace, it sounds and it stills. Cock crow, it is there, the human place. On what does it depend, this music, the children's games? A long tradition of rest, meditation? What peace is so profound that it can reach all habitants, all children, the eyes at worship, the shattered in hospitals, all voyagers? Meditation of holding to resistance, and within this resistance, fluid change that can respond, that can show the children a long future of finding, of responsibility. Change within change, and tension of sharing consciousness, village to city, city to village, person to person, entire, with unchanging cock crow and unchanging endurance under the skies of war. The second reading is by Volodymyr Zelensky from his inauguration speech. A president is not an icon, nor an idol. A president is not a portrait. Put photographs of your children there instead, and before making any decision, look them in the eyes. The third reading is from an anonymous writer. One autumn evening, a while ago, I was driving by a big field and it looked totally black, as if some farmer had burned it off, all wasted, bleak, and barren. Then a strip of the black suddenly moved up into the air against the evening sky, formed into a flock of men, a magic, secret ritual. I sat there 15 minutes watching until the field was empty.
Always and forever, we live under the skies of war. We live under the skies of cruelty, empire, evil, oppression. If there was a golden age of peace in human history, I don't know when that was. We forget from time to time, because we're lucky, most of us, to live where war has not recently come. We forget, and then, as in recent days, we're jolted back again, and we remember with the poet that our work in this life, rain or shine, is the unrelenting work of resistance, not intermittent anti-war action when the news is particularly grim, and not simply prayers for peace piously whispered to wipe harsh images from our minds so we can get on with our day, not knee-jerk responses to this cause or that one, but a constant, continuing, deepening orientation of the Spirit that spreads, as she says, from village to city, city to village, person to person, entire. Resistance and hope, they're habits of being hard-won and practiced in community, cultivated not in fits and starts, but over the course of your whole lifetime. On what does peace depend? Asked the poet. Meditation, yes, but within a tension of long resistance to all invasion, all seductions of hate. Generations of holding to resistance, and within it, fluid change that can respond, that can show the children a long future of finding, of responsibility, change within change and tension of sharing consciousness, village to city, city to village, person to person, entire, under the skies of war. We forget that sometimes beloved members of our human family, distant neighbors, are dwelling all the time, day and night, beneath the skies of war. As long as any army anywhere is marching, or any rogue or nation dropping bombs on hospitals and schools, whether in Mariupol or Aleppo, Afghanistan, Yemen, Palestine, Ethiopia, Sudan, It is so easy to forget. And it's equally easy to forget that we live at the same time, always and forever, under the skies of hope. Sometimes we forget we're swimming in the midst of it, always in the midst of possibility. We forget that, like despair, hope also is a habit, and we forget to flex its muscle, wield it like a sword. Not gauzy dreams, but the kind of harsh and holy hope you mean to speak to children, your most discerning companions. It's intertwined with our justifiable despair. A writer tells of driving near a blackened field, burnt and wasted, barren, depressing. They slow their car because a strip of the black suddenly moved up into the air against the evening sky and flew away. And there was a pause, and a second formation took off, and so it went, a magic ritual. I watched until the field was empty. The barren ruin is a flock of living birds, and they rise at dusk from land not dead, but fallow. Sometimes we don't even know we're in the midst of hope till it rises right before our eyes, and even then, as the whisper of it brushes against our face, the wing of it, even then we call it magic, barely believing that it's real. It is not the same, you know, as optimism. I'm thinking about a meeting on Zoom just about exactly 2 years ago with the epidemiologist Michael Osterholm. This was at the very start of our experience of the pandemic. He met with 200 faith leaders from all over Minnesota when some of us were still thinking we'd be back in our buildings just fine by summer 2020. I think Reverend Luke was on that call with us in some little tiny Zoom square off in the corner. Osterholm talked about his own pandemic position, cautious, measured, evidence-based, every ounce of it calculated from every conceivable variable, from data, science, from the reliable mathematics of probability. And the weight of it was palpable. At one point, though, somebody on this call asked Dr. Osterholm about hope specifically. And for just a second, he looked so wistful, and he let his guard down. And for just a moment, he talked to us then about his own church and its choir, maybe a choir he sings in, maybe music he just loved to hear. He had just told us, in no uncertain terms, that no congregations, no choirs would be meeting for a very long time. But in one unguarded moment, he looked down, and then he looked into the camera, into our faces there waiting, and he said, I'm so hopeful that someday soon on Sundays we'll all sing again. His optimism was in the science, sparing, unsparing. It was sparse, precise, and he steered us back there pretty quickly. But it was so clear that he was telling us we're saved by both in this pandemic, in this life, under the skies of plague and fear and loss. We're saved by a practical, realistic, hard-working optimism, not wishful thinking. And we are also saved by hope, which is also not wishful thinking, but an orientation of spirit. And it rises like birds on the wing. It's expansive, it's untethered, it carries us again and again over the fields of despair. It springs from whatever it is we most deeply believe in, and thus we can't think our way toward it or work our way toward it or cogently reason our way toward it, all the things Unitarians love. We conjure it together, lift it up together like birds rising from a field. My husband and I are in the process of moving right now from Mahtomedi to St. Paul. It doesn't matter how far you move. It could be just down the block. It's always a traumatic upheaval. And I've been sorting books, which is a task that feels like entering a time machine. One that didn't make the cut is an old one from the 1990s called We've Had 100 Years of Psychotherapy and the World is Getting Worse, written by a psychiatrist, and it's all marked up with my notes and highlights that I once thought were so intelligent and so important. I didn't keep the book or the notes, but I love the title. We've had 100 years of psychotherapy and the world's getting worse, which is how it feels so often, right? When I think about our work in the world for human rights or human liberation, social justice, environmental justice, peace, we've had 100 years, 1,000 years of marching and active nonviolent resistance, 4 centuries to abolish slavery, for example, 150 years since the Civil War to build up herd immunity to the aftershocks of slavery, the racism that still poisons our blood. We've had 100 years, literally lifetimes, of activism to reverse our devastating impact on the planet, to change the ways we ravage species, water, sacred land, fragile ecosystems, and each other. Entire careers, countless degrees in science, medicine, social work, politics, teaching, ministry. A congregation I served out east long ago had its roots in the Underground Railroad in New England. And in the minutes from meetings held in the 19th century, in this old leather-bound book, there were notes about a member there, a free black trans woman named Mr. Roberts, who poured coffee in the parlor every Sunday with the Ladies' Guild wearing a burgundy gown. She was beloved there, way back then. Now, here we are, 100 years later, with one state saying we can't say gay, another terrorizing trans kids and their parents, and you wonder, we've had 100 years of fighting for each other's worth and dignity, caring for each other, cherishing, making holy space for each other, even unto death. And is the world getting better or worse or what? It's sometimes hard to tell. It's always hard to tell. We work so hard, you work so hard to love the world, to change it, to transform yourselves and every broken thing through legislation, agitation, imagination, and still the world's on fire. People dying, children crying, everywhere you look. So the danger for us, Unitarian Universalists, a mortal danger, like a mortal sin, is the belief that we can, in our lifetime, hard work the troubles away. The danger when you give your whole heart, your whole life, every drop of hope and sweat to the work of transformation and expect the world to change as a result, the danger is disappointment, which can make a person bitter over time, which can make a spirit weary, turn idealism into jaded cynicism before you're even old because you feel you failed. I've seen it brush across the faces of so many people I admire and love. I've seen it in my own face in the mirror. There's danger not just of discouragement, but of losing faith, losing heart, losing altitude, losing our way, our soul force. When we've worked so hard and then don't win peace in our lifetime or triumph over climate change, can't conquer racism, classism, misogyny, homophobia, we run the risk of a spiritual crisis, and it can start to look like apathy, like a burnt-out field. It can look like despair. But listen to my language. Win, triumph, conquer. This is the language of conquest and empire. It's the mindset of patriarchy and white supremacy and capitalism. So no wonder we're sometimes discouraged if those are our terms, because conquering a thing is never the right thing, and it's rarely even possible. Jesus said, "The poor you will always have with you." And he didn't mean, so don't worry about them. You might as well try to get rich. He meant, I think, greed and fear run so deep in human animals. They're so hard to root out. And thus, inequity and war and oppression and poverty, they run rampant. Give all you have, always, to transformation of your own heart first and then the world, and know that good will come. Laws will change. The arc will bend a bit toward justice, but not all at once, and not all in your lifetime, which is short. Love the world and each other. Be about the work of love, radical love, hospitality, radical forgiveness. Be about the work of love, but without conditions. This is not a contractual situation where you get to say, you'll work for justice, work for peace, but only if you can see consistent and tangible signs of measurable progress. This is not how this goes. He meant, I think, as others since Jesus have meant, love without condition. Love the world regardless. Give your life away, do the work of love with heart, mind, soul, and strength, and let go of your need to win, your longing for control, for perfection, conquest. It's hubris to believe we can fix everything or control anything. Love anyway. Shine anyway. Hope anyway. Some things will shift. Lives and souls will be saved, maybe starting with your own. Unclench your angsty little fist. I'm talking to myself now. Unclench your angsty fist. Put one hand into the hands of all the people who came before you, every ancestor who lived their life for love. We're the living evidence of that. And place your other hand in the hands of those who will come next, because they are coming, ready or not, and they need something to hang on to, and that something is your own unjaded, not cynical, inexhaustible conviction that this broken world is beautiful, that you'll do just about anything to save it, even knowing you won't live to see any outcome. The arc is very long. There's a song by the activist Reverend Sekou who sings, "What a time to be alive. What a time to be alive. The revolution has come." What a time to be alive. What a time to be alive. When we rise up, we've already won. And that's true whether you are singing about justice in the street or whether you're singing about crawling out of your bed with a weary heart on a cloudy morning. When we rise up, we've actually won. Every breath matters. Every little action with intention for the love of life is its own victory. In the streets this year and last year, and who knows when these years began, after George Floyd was killed, after Dante Wright was killed, after Amir Locke was killed, all by police, in the streets I've heard a chant, and usually in huge crowds. Sometimes there can come, remarkably, this moment of stillness. It's like a contagious stillness, people breathing as one into their confusion, their rage, their grief, and then somebody with a megaphone will start singing, "Ancestors watching, I know they're watching. Ancestors watching, I know, I know." And this can go on, and it builds really loud, and then it drops to a whisper, hundreds of voices, maybe thousands, strangers, reminding each other, reminding themselves. One speaker at one demonstration this winter asked at one point for only young black men to sing those lines. Everybody else was silent. And their own voices through their masks, reminding themselves they're not alone. They are companioned now by a mighty cloud of witnesses, ancestors watching. It's an incantation for protection. It's a summons. If you felt that your ancestors were watching you right now, your mother, your grandma, someone who passed on whom you really respected, how would you be behaving? What would you show them you could dare or do or dream? If you knew your children were watching or someone else's kids, watching you become an ancestor in training, how would you behave? We plant our hope for peace, for justice, for transformation in deep, deep soil. As one world leader, Zelensky, said not long ago, Don't put my portrait on your walls, no portraits. Put pictures of your children there instead, and before making any decision, look those children in the eye. We make our choices, we do our work, pray, act, sing, march, vote, get up in the morning and greet the day and try to act decently with kindness, not because any concrete result or return is guaranteed, but because our children are watching. We look them in the eyes, our own and other people's children, and we mean to be the kind of ancestors they could years from now remember and be inspired by when their own hope flags, which it will, when their own skies darken under clouds of war, when the evidence for fear seems way to outweigh the evidence for joy. We insist on joy. We insist on love, on hope, though we have considered all the facts. From the poet Marge Piercy, who shall bear hope? Who else but us? Who can bear hope back into the world but us? You, my other flesh, all of us who have seen the face of hope at least once in vision, in dream, in marching, who sang hope into rising like a conjured snake, who found its flower about timberline by a melting glacier. We must shine with hope, stained glass windows that shape light into icons, glow like lanterns born before a procession. Hope sleeps in our bones, she says, like a bear waiting for spring to rise and walk. For just a moment, let's hold silence here together. The hymn is This Is My Song, Finlandia, John Sibelius's beautiful melody. And we'll sing it this morning in solidarity with the children of Ukraine, whose faces we have all seen now, and also for the children and adults in Russia who didn't ask for this war and don't want it. Benediction is a prayer for spring, even though it was 8 degrees when I got in my car this morning. So in spite of and because of the fact that we don't know and can't know what comes next, a prayer for spring, for you, an incantation, magic spell for all that lies ahead. Sunshine down, rain down, and wash away the weariness of our plague-bound years. Bring spring. Robins, geese, cardinals, sing out, cry out, squawk, be loud. Nothing but your raucous music can thaw these frozen lakes. Earth, mudify, squishify, soften. Show us once more how to melt into hope. Ready our spirits like soil for new seed. People, get ready. Open your windows, go out your doors, be grateful and glad. There's no denying this light spilling everywhere. The world and the work call out to you now, and you've made it this far, who are not alone but companioned by trees and light and each other. You're given this day to rejoice in, to wander around in and wonder anew. How shall you set your hand? Lift your gaze. Raise your voice, raise your fist, raise your kids for love. Every breath, the work of love. Amen.